we need an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. We support the ceasefire resolution. When we hear Israeli spokespersons deny that Israel is deliberately killing civilians in Gaza, we know they're lying. We know because Israel's leaders are saying the opposite in Israel. The vice chair of the Israeli Knesset says, burn Gaza now and leave only one old man there to tell what happened. Another Knesset member said, erase all of Gaza from the face of the earth. Another Knesset member said, there are no innocents in Gaza. Mow them down. And that's why most of the 30,000 people Israel has killed in Gaza are women and children. The attitude of Israel's awful leaders has filtered down to the soldiers and the pilots who dropped the bombs. Videos show Israeli soldiers marching into Gaza chanting, there are no innocents in Gaza, and they are mowing them down. An Israeli sniper shot and killed 2 Christian women who were walking in the courtyard of their church in Gaza. Then he shot 7 other Christians in the church. That's murder. That's not defending Israel. This CNN article about the attack says Israeli tanks then targeted a Christian convent that houses 54 disabled people. Pope Francis is quoted saying, this is terrorism. This was no accident. You have this article, by the way. This is no accident. This is what Israel's doing in Gaza. Because Israel has the worst leaders it's ever had. They're corrupt and immoral, and they're taking Israel down the wrong path. And they're dragging us down that wrong path if we continue to support what they're doing. Voting no on the ceasefire resolution means you're continuing your support of what they're doing. Voting present means you're okay with what they're doing because it doesn't bother you enough to ask for it to stop. Voting yes on the ceasefire resolutions means you know in your heart that killing Christian women in church is not the way for Israel to defend itself, and you want Israel to stop and rethink what it's doing. Joe Biden can make a ceasefire happen. If enough city councils pass resolutions, he might do it. If you're a Christian, vote yes. If you care about Israel and want it to do better, vote yes. If you want to make a lot of Jews in Louisville happy, vote yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Greenleaf.
Thank you, Chad. Comment?
Good evening. I'm Chad Kamen. I'm Jewish, and I'm joining many others in my community and across the city in urging the passing of the ceasefire resolution. There are people who are spreading fear in our city, the insidious fear that this resolution is divisive, the irrational fear that a resolution joining a global call for peace will somehow undo or break our faith-based alliances here in town. I know that's not true, and I cannot let fear prevent me from doing the right thing. For my grief over the murder of entire families in Gaza is stronger than my fear of being divisive. Like a previous generation's grief over lynching and segregation was stronger than their fear over being divisive. Overcoming the fear of being divisive made the civil rights movement possible. And like then, we should overcome our fear and take a step toward justice. We can follow in their footsteps, but we must choose to. A majority of Louisvillians want a ceasefire. We are 5 months into unrelenting violence against the people of Gaza by Israel, and I think we can all agree that we don't want to see another 30,000 elders and parents and children killed. Let's make that clear by voting for this resolution. It will bring us together as a city, and I know that from personal experience. Supporting the ceasefire resolution has brought me into deeper community with a large, diverse coalition of Louisvillians, particularly Jewish and Palestinian Americans, who are working together to witness each other, to allow our grief to fuel a unity where no one's pain is silenced because it makes us uncomfortable or ashamed. But this city has already made the Palestinian people who call Louisville home feel less than human by lighting up the Big Four bridge with the colors of the Israeli flag while intoning to them that now is not the time for their pain. That it may be too divisive to say that our city does not stand with them as they're watching their families and their cultural institutions and their lives be destroyed. Metro Council, we have the power to change that. There is a movement across this country of cities like ours passing resolutions urging our federal government to make a ceasefire happen. We cannot achieve this alone, but we're here today because we are not alone. I remember once as a kid being so upset when I heard some of my closest Muslim friends went to a rally for Palestine. Between tears, I asked my mom, why do my friends hate us? And I'm here today because I know that the only hate that has ever separated us is that which allowed me to believe that someone advocating for their dignity was an attack on my own. True unity is one that allows for us to not only witness each other's pain, but to actively advocate against the conditions which deny one another humanity. For if we can acknowledge in all of this that our pain is tied together, so too is our liberation. And that demands we come together as a city and vote for a ceasefire. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kemen.
Thank you. Macy Martin.
If I can have everyone's attention. I'm Macy Martin. I'm a concerned citizen, and I raise the thoughts for Palestine that of how many more children must die for you to cease on me? How many more children must die in a famine man-made, inches away from a truck that feeds the hungry? Must their pleas be wrapped in gold and ivory for you to consider me? The screams of pain as the bombs are dropped, young children and families, 30,000, yet some still have yet to be found under the rubble. War crimes in agony. How many more comparable lives must perish under your responsibility until you stop denying me basics of life, food, shelter, safety, denying me humankind, community, dignity, and humanity? How many more chunks of my population must hit the floor for you to stop idling on me? And what about the purposefully targeted and bombed hospitals and camps of innocent civilian refugees until you see me? How many more cities destroyed until you see the irony while Israel continues to flourish? They're not starving, they're not dying under rubble. They do not cry and scream out, Allah have mercy on me, while holding their dead months-old child. This isn't war anymore. This is a genocidal ethnic cleansing, you see. Because Louisville should not be responsible for the $9 million sent to this ethnic cleansing machine. We could be sending aid, pouring millions into our own displaced, increasing jobs, food, and housing accessibility. Please open your eyes. How many shredded dreams and families must be broadcast? How many more active duty martyrs should be self-immolating in extreme protest? How many more people crying, screaming must you see to stop questioning and know this is not where our taxes should go? Louisville is our home and should not be a manufacturer of the military equipment that's packaged up, sent in bows, and ready to go blow and open fire on starving people seeking flour to fill their stomachs after eating nothing but scraps and blown ashes of city remains, family memories and screams of pain. How many gut-wrenching pains of undigestible animal feed pucks must be eaten right in front of your face today for you to say, I'm in favor of a true ceasefire, and I'll stand with Gaza until they can? Because that spark in you about the greater plan is still there. When a kid asked you if you could have anything in the world, and you said world peace, to stop world hunger, to cease war, and you can, and now's your chance. You're part of this timeline to enact the plans. Because a butterfly who flaps their wings across the ocean ripples tsunamis of change to tie loose ends of the world. Free Gaza, ceasefire, free Palestine.
Thank you, Ms. Martin.
Thank you. Lean Abazad.
Good evening, council members. My name is Lean Abu Zayed. I address you today as a healthcare worker, U of L alumni, Fulbright scholar, and a child of Palestinian refugees. 5 months ago today, I never thought that I would be standing here before you to plead the growing case of healthcare inaccessibility in Louisville and the genocide against my people. 5 months ago today, I never thought that I would be reading over the Palestine Health Ministry's death toll report to find over 40 members of my family on this list. Hassan Yusuf Abla Ahmed, 4 names that are only 4 of the 53 and counting members of my family in Gaza that have been killed by the occupation regime since October 7th. Kentucky has the 3rd highest death rate age adjusted per 100,000 people in the United States. Kentucky is also ranked 47th highest based on life expectancy as of 2020. Compared to 6 years ago, Jefferson County has seen a decline in life expectancy. The current life expectancy for residents is about 74.8 years. However, the average life expectancy in the Northwest Core, where predominantly Black residents live, is 65.4 years, 15 years less than those living in the eastern part of the county. As a healthcare worker, I often work with veterans of Iraq, Vietnam, and other regions. These are patients that suffer with PTSD, accelerated health disease, and an astonishing rate of heart disease, and many other treatable afflictions. I've seen patients removed from the emergency room and thrown into the streets, and patients that are unable to consent to receiving care due to an inability to afford insurance. The terms of a crisis of healthcare inequity in Louisville is a solvable one, though not immediate. As we look back through American history, we acknowledge that the Montgomery bus boycott didn't end segregation immediately, nor did Muhammad Ali's defiance of being enlisted in the Vietnam War. But both were hailed as acts of defiance that went down in history as those that moved against the nation's tide. When Louisville taxpayers reject sending millions of our federal tax dollars to an occupying country in the Middle East, this is an act that allows us...
Miss, I would ask you to stay on the topic that you signed up to speak, please. Thank you.
I am speaking about
Thank
healthcare. This is an act that allows us to better fund life-giving services like healthcare access in our community, to stand against bills and policies that enable the funding of militarized weaponry and aid that translates to billions of the nation's dollars, is an act of justice for the city of Louisville.
Mr. Boyce, I do not want to interrupt you. Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. We have rules related to signing up to speak. I do not want to cut people off. I do not want to interrupt people, and I do not want to ask you to leave. We are happy to listen to people who speak, but you sign up for a reason. Those are the rules, and those are the rules that we will follow. Thank you, Ms. Boyce.
Can I address the fact that there is somebody speaking today that doesn't live in Kentucky, that doesn't live in Louisville, sorry, but is speaking against the resolution? The only reason why I signed up to speak on the healthcare topic is because I wasn't allowed.
Benabo.
Madam Clerk, if we could call the next speaker, please.
Karen Benabo. Melanie Pell.
If we could please remove people. Thank you.
Good evening. Good, thank you.
Madam Clerk, if you could call the next speaker, please. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Good evening. My name is Melanie Pell, and I'm a proud native Louisvillian with deep love for this great city. In my professional capacity, I am the Chief Field Operations Officer for the American Jewish Committee, a global advocacy organization for the Jewish people. Exactly 1 year ago, I was in Israel, standing on the border between Israel and Gaza, and I wish some of our friends that just left were here to hear me tell this story. I was meeting with the mayor and members of the regional council, people in roles very similar to yours, who represent the kibbutzim, the towns, the villages, and communities along the southern border of Israel. The mayor, Ophir Liebstein, excitedly described the industrial zone that they were building so that tens of thousands of their Palestinian neighbors from Gaza could come work every day and earn a living. He had a vision. He believed. He longed for peace. This was his life's work. And on October 7th, he was murdered. His 19-year-old son, Nitzan, was murdered. His mother-in-law was murdered. His nephew was murdered. These planned atrocities targeted civilians, with more than 1,200 men, women, and children and infants slaughtered that day, and more than 250 taken captive into Gaza. Out of those taken hostage, 132 are still being held, including 19 women, 14 of them young women. The immediate release of these hostages must be a top priority. We've seen the harrowing United Nations report that detailed the horrific sexual torture endured by the women massacred on October 7th, and evidence that those being held in Gaza underwent and are still subject to similar atrocities. The UN Secretary General on Sexual Violence and Conflict led a team to investigate this sexual violence. Her report, which was released March 4th, details evidence of systemic weaponized sexual violence, including rape and gang rape and the rape of corpses. Many females were found naked or partially naked with their genitals shot and mutilated. The women who have already been held captive for 5 months are living under conditions we hope they're living. We don't know, but they're being held under conditions too difficult to comprehend. There is a ceasefire proposal on the table today, and that has been on the table for 6 weeks, and it calls for a phase where the elderly, the women, and the injured will be released. Hamas has rejected that ceasefire as they have rejected every ceasefire proposal and violated the ceasefire that was actually in effect on October 6th. As National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said just yesterday, Hamas's rejection of this proposal shows what little regard they have for Palestinian civilians. All of our lives changed on October 7th. The pain, the fear, the loss, the grief felt by all of us, all who were impacted by this war, a war Hamas started. Hamas is the enemy, not the Palestinian people. Let's free Gaza from Hamas. If I believed for one moment that this effort in the Metro Council would lead to bringing home the hostages, I would support it. We all want peace. We all want an end to suffering. We urge you to consider how you can be a force for healing and not a force for continued division in what is clearly a divided council and a divided moment for so many of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pell.
Rabbi Shalom Litzen.
Good evening. My name is Rabbi Litvin. I'm an emissary of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Menachem Schneerson, the foremost Jewish leader of the modern era. I also serve as chairman of the Kentucky Jewish Council, and I am the second rabbi in history to be born in Louisville and serve in Louisville. I rise today to address the performative resolution seeming to call for a ceasefire in Israel's war against the genocidal Hamas terrorist organization that began following the atrocities of October 7th. The pro-Hamas protesters behind this resolution ignore the slaughter and rape of October 7th and the more than 100 hostages, including Americans, who are still being held, like 9-month-old Kfir Bibas and Itai Chan, a 19-year-old boy who we just found out 2 days ago was murdered in Hamas captivity, accompanied by fabricated accusations and calls for further violence against Jews, both here in Louisville and in their homeland. These demands ignore two crucial facts. The first is that, and I hope I don't hurt anybody's feelings here, the Louisville City Council doesn't have the ability to end the war in Gaza. Benjamin Netanyahu is not waiting to hear what Louisville has to say before he plans his next operation, neither is Hamas. Secondly, and there are issues that the council can deal with here at home, standing here the day after the 4th anniversary of March 13th. I don't have to go on further than that. Secondly, calls for a ceasefire superfluous, because there's already a ceasefire offer on the table. Israel has made two very simple and moral requests: the return of the hostages who were kidnapped on October 7th, including the dead bodies still being held, and the disarmament of the Hamas terrorist organization so they cannot, as they swore to, carry out further attacks like October 7th. There was a tremendous amount of anti-Semitic lies that were espoused here today. Some of them strayed to the protocols, the others to Zion, and I won't address all of them, but I will say that the false accusation of genocide is nothing more than an anti-Semitic blood libel. And the idea that Louisville money is going to Israel is simply misinformed at best. A ceasefire resolution would not affect Gaza, but it would affect our community here in Louisville. It would not affect anything in Israel's policy. It would not affect anything in the policy of Hamas, which this resolution doesn't have either the morality or the courage to name. The only people that will hear this ceasefire is the Jewish community of Louisville, the largest Jewish community in the state, in which every major organization has spoken out against the ceasefire, and the protesters who on October 8th were celebrating what had happened, who on November 18th marched on a synagogue here in Louisville, and who gathered outside here to yell victory for Gaza, the genocidal call from the river to the sea, and not calls for ceasefire, but for a bloody victory for Hamas. As seen, they don't even want to hear Jewish voices, but would rather storm out than have conversation. I pray for peace in the Holy Land, and I believe that everyone here in this council joins me. Peace will come the moment that Hamas chooses a better future for their children over the ability to kill ours. God bless the heroes of the IDF as they protect every citizen of Israel, Jewish, Muslim, or otherwise. Bring the hostages home. Bring them home now. Am Yisrael Chai, the people of Israel live. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Gary Watson.